What has national defence, a lighthouse, flood defences, and streetlights got in common? Well, in economics, we call them public goods. And when we're considering what a public good is, we look at a certain characteristic, or two characteristics, in fact. And when we're considering the different types of goods that we have in economics, we look at whether they're excludable or non-excludable, rivalrous or non-rivalrous. And when we look at public goods, we can see that they're non-rivalrous, but they're also non-excludable. So what does that actually mean? Well, let's go back to some of these examples. If you think about streetlights, if the streetlights have been built and they're operating, then everybody can benefit from it. And the consumption of those streetlights shouldn't reduce the benefits from others also using it. So non-rivalry means when a good is consumed, it doesn't reduce the amount available for other individuals. So let's think about flood defence. Let's say there's a flood or there's high rainfall and the flood defence is working and it's protecting one house. Well, because that house is technically consuming it because it's being actioned, it's being worked, that doesn't mean that their next door neighbour will not enjoy the same benefits. And then we can think about non-excludability. Well, it's not possible to provide a good without it being possible for others to enjoy it. If it's been built, it's there. If you think about streetlights, that's not going to exclude anyone because anybody who's driving past or any pedestrians that are walking past, they're going to be able to use it. They cannot be charged for using it. And the same goes for flood defence. If the flood defence has been built, then how do you exclude houses from being protected from the flood defence? It's impossible to do so. But that creates an issue, and that issue is the free rider problem. So what the free rider problem relates to is that because it's impossible to prevent anyone from enjoying the good once it's been provided, there's actually no incentive for individuals to pay for the good because they can consume it without paying for it. So again, with those streetlights, why would an individual pay for streetlights, pay for lights that go up in the street, where there'll be the cost of buying it, the cost of maintaining it, the energy bills involved in it, when your neighbours and people driving down the same street as you, the local community, can all access it for free? There is no incentive to demand it. And if there's no incentive to demand it, then there's no incentive for the private sector to provide it. And that creates an issue. Because if left to a free market, what we'd have is we'd have a missing market. And what I mean by a missing market is complete market failure. Due to the free rider problem, when left to the free market, this good would just be absent. It'd be completely missing because the government wouldn't be there to obviously intervene because it's a completely free market. So with no demand and no incentive for private producers, it just simply wouldn't be allocated. So it wouldn't even just be an inefficient allocation of resources, it'd be a complete missing market and it'd be complete market failure. So market failure occurs where there is inefficient allocation of resources in a free market, but complete market failure exists when free markets are unable to allocate scarce resources to the satisfaction of a need or want. And clearly we do need these goods. It's clear that we need them because the government does intervene and the government does provide these goods. But how they fund it is obviously, they acknowledge the free rider problem, so they fund it via our tax. If we're paying tax, then technically we are paying to use these goods. But it's the only way to avoid the market failure and the free rider problem is the government allocating the resource, but taxing us to, I suppose, use it. So if we think about streetlights, why do we need them? Well, according to reports and according to research, only a quarter of all travel by car drivers is between the hours of 7 p.m. and 8 a.m. Yet this period accounts for 40% of fatal and serious injuries to the same group. So that means that when we're talking about streetlights, they obviously help prevent accidents, they help to prevent crime, and therefore they increase safety. When we think about flood defence, well, in 2019 there was a study that said inland flooding would on average cost almost 3 times more on an annual basis without these defences. So a bill of 1.8 billion rather than 0.7 billion if we didn't have these flood defences in place. The government currently spends 0.6 billion each year on these flood defences, but they believe that if they weren't there and the government didn't allocate those resources, then it'd be detrimental to the cost of the economy because of obviously the damage that flooding can do. National defence. Again, think about the responsibilities of the Ministry of Defence. So defence, security, thinking about nuclear deterrence, thinking about contributing to improved understanding of the world and trying to avoid, for example, terrorism and so on. They're absolutely crucial. But if it's not for the government, then the private sector would not provide them because of the free rider problem. And that's the issue with public goods provision, and that's the issue with complete market failure and that missing market.